Today's event is themed as mobility and economic growth. And we would invite Gani Kodikara to welcome you this evening.
Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the chairman and the executive committee of the Ceylon Motor Trade Association, it gives me great pleasure and privilege to welcome all of you to the mobility and economic growth panel discussion. So firstly, I extend a warm welcome to our keynote speaker this evening, Mr. Katsuki Kotaro, Deputy Head of Mission at the Embassy of Japan. We are truly honored your presence today. Next, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed panelists and the moderator this evening. Mrs. Tilaka Jayasundara, Secretary, Minister of Education, and Former Secretary, Minister of Industries. Engineer, Mr. Ranjit Rupasinghe, Secretary, Minister of Transport and Highways. And Mr. Bingumar Thivaratantri, Chairman, Sri Lanka Bankers Association and CEO, Standard Chartered Bank. And we are also privileged to have Mr. Ashendra Amarasinghe, immediate past Chairman, CMTA, and CEO of Carmart Limited as the moderator of this discussion. And then let's extend a warm welcome to the distinguished members of the diplomatic missions, respected officials representing ministries, government organization, and the government of Sri Lanka. Invitees from non-governmental organization, the corporate sector, and industry professionals. A heartfelt welcome to our officials representing sponsors, Sri Lanka Insurance, HNB Leasing, SLT Mobitel, AkzoNobel Paint. A special welcome to our electronic media partner, RTV, and the invitees from the other media organizations. Next, a warm welcome to founders, chairmen, managing directors, and CEOs of the CMTA member companies, and the officials who are here today. And finally, to my fellow CMTA executive and management committee members. And once again, I'll extend a heartfelt welcome to each and every one of you and hope that you will all gain lots of valuable insights from this session. Thank you.
Next, I would invite our Senior Vice Chairman, Mr. Virandi Zoisa, to introduce today's keynote speaker, Mr. Katsuki Kotaro, Minister and Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of Japan.
Good evening to you all. Firstly, thank you for making it in a timely manner despite the weather conditions. Happy that most of you were able to make it here today. I'm deeply honored to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Katsuki Kotaro, Minister and Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of Japan in Sri Lanka. Myself and Charaka first had the opportunity to engage with Kotaro-san close to 2 years ago, where we immediately understood the depth of his contribution and commitment towards the betterment of Sri Lanka and forging sustainable policy. Thank you for being with us today. Kotaro-san is a veteran, joining the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1994, navigating over 16 key assignments, influencing global policy over the past 30 years. I would like to mention a few key positions held. Official, United Nations Policy Division, Deputy Director, China and Mongolia Division, First Secretary, Embassy of Japan in the United States of America, Counselor, Embassy of Japan in the People's Republic of China, Senior Coordinator, Cabinet Secretariat, and most recently from 2021 as Minister, Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of Japan in Sri Lanka. Added to his many academic achievements, Kotaro-san is also a part-time lecturer in the Faculty of Law at Chuo University of Japan. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Please let me invite Mr. Katsuki Kotaro, Minister and Deputy Head of Mission, Embassy of Japan, to the podium to make his address.
Engineer Ranjit Rupasinghe, Secretary, Ministry of Transport and Highways. I think on the way, Ms. Tilaka Jayasundara, Secretary, Ministry of Education and former Secretary to Ministry of Industry. Also, Shantavira Singha, the current Secretary for the Ministry of Industry. Also, fellow panelist, Mr. Bingumar Thivaratantri, Chairman, Sri Lanka Bankers Association, and CMTA leadership, including Mr. Charaka Pereira, Chairman of CMTA, and other dignitaries. Also, Mr. Yasendra Amarasinghe, immediate past chairman of CMTA, fellow diplomats, friends, and government officials, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great honor to be here speaking with you. But I am about to shy away because, sitting in front of the most knowledgeable in the industry and to talk about it is, I feel really, in a difficult position. But nevertheless, today I think the topic is mobility and economic growth. So I think I'll start from the economic growth part and share with you how we see things at this moment. And whatever I say wrongly, Bingu can correct me later. So I feel a little bit more relaxed doing in that sequence. So talking about the economic growth. So, well, macroeconomic wise, I think it's fair to say that things have become much better significantly since the economic downfall in 2022. If we look at the growth rates, it has become positive year on year after the third quarter of last year. So I think currently the president is mentioning about the year 2024 target of 3% growth, which might be achievable. I think most recently the World Bank released their forecast for this year, and that's 2.2%. So I think this kind of growth is within reach. And then also prices. What we witnessed right after the 2022 crisis was soaring inflation, and I recall that the highest figures was around 70% plus year on year. I think that was the autumn of that year. But this also has come down. So I think since last July, it has come down to single digit. And the most recent figure I just checked before coming here, end of March, that was 2.5%, so quite low. But in any case, things have calmed down significantly. But at the same time, we have to be wary that it doesn't mean that prices are coming down. Rather, what shoot it up is staying high and continuing to be high. So one thing I think which is very important is to make sure that the social safety nets are dealt with properly. And for that, I think we are also trying our best to coordinate with other entities to address that properly. But this kind of macroeconomic stability was brought about by the effort of course, the government, but also the IMF started the EFF program they decided in March 2023, and we have also gone through the first review. So this IMF program, with the effort of the Sri Lankan government to implement it, has, I think, brought about this relative stability in quite a remarkable short period of time. So I think this is worthy of commending. And the Japanese government has also tried our best to work closely and in that regard. Another thing which is very important is the debt restructuring process which is going on, because everything happened because the foreign reserves was not abundant for Sri Lanka to pay back its debts, and that's why default was declared back in 2022. But I think it's, I'd be glad to say that the debt restructuring is also moving forward, especially on the government creditors side. We were asked by the president to help in whatever way possible. And so we have established this official creditors committee. And basically all the government creditors are on board, except China, but we had them on board as an observer. So basically we shared all the information. And through that effort, end of last November, we were able to agree upon the terms of restructuring our debt vis-a-vis Sri Lanka. Now what we are doing is we're working on what we call a MOU. And what we're literally trying to do is to put it down in writing, the treatment that we will be doing. And the past month I was back in Japan for my holiday, but it was more of a kind of working holiday. And one of the places I went was our finance ministry, and I was sitting down with the person in charge of this whole process. And I was asking him, when will this MOU get through? well, he was telling me, Kotaro-san, be patient, we are working on it, but it's, it's like around the corner, so it won't be, too far away. That was my takeaway. So hopefully, once this MOU is concluded, then it will send a very positive message to the outside, but also put some pressure on the commercial creditors, which this is also, the talks are ongoing. Well, I'm not in a position to, I'm not part of the negotiation, and I don't know, what is actually happening. But from what I hear is that, several rounds of talks have been, being made, and so hopefully there will be some kind of progress on that front also, which will lead to a second review approval by the IMF board in the very near future.
Thank you, Kotaro-san. That was rather insightful and a 360-degree analysis of the situation. Well, next is the panel discussion.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us despite less than ideal weather. We hope that it doesn't end up like the weather in Dubai, but if it does, I'm sure Sri Lanka Insurance will have us all covered. As Sri Lanka rounds the corner of the pandemic, which hit us quite badly, and the resulting economic crises and multiple crises, and Sri Lanka looks to accelerate into the straight of economic growth, we must look ahead and ascertain that we're pointing in the right direction before smashing the throttle. Today, with our panel of esteemed experts from across different areas, from international relations, industry, transport, banking, and finance, we explore this topic from a variety of perspectives and aim to shed some light on the path that the country is on. It's an extremely broad topic. We'll try to keep it moving along. We won't get into the weeds of it, as we say. The format of the panel discussion is that it'll be going for 45 minutes, and there'll be 4 rounds, and I will throw it to the audience for questions in between the rounds. Only 1 or 2 questions from the audience, and then we'll carry on. Firstly, Kotaro-san. Traditionally, Japan has been quite an advocate of Sri Lanka for many decades, and has continued to support us through the economic crisis. What is the feeling of Japan towards the progress that Sri Lanka has made in terms of the fiscal policy changes?
Thank you, Yasendra, for that question. As I mentioned during the keynote speech, I think, well, the efforts have been remarkable. And revenue is going up, and then expenditure also, I think prioritization is happening, and I think that's leading to a better situation. So I think as a friendly nation with Sri Lanka, we are very happy about that. After World War II, when Japan was in deep trouble, Sri Lanka was there to assist us. So we are very much in a similar mode. So because Sri Lanka is now, well, we thought it was in deep trouble back in 2022. So I think we are trying our best to be of whatever help possible. And so the IMF process, the debt restructuring process. Also, Yamada-san from JICA is here. He's doing an immense, tremendous job in doing things. Also, once the MOU of the Official Creditors Committee will be signed with Sri Lanka, then I think we will start looking into resuming our suspended yen loan projects. And so, and also, JCM, we are looking into helping renewable energies. So yeah, we are doing quite a lot of things so to assist Sri Lanka in whatever way possible, but also to work together to aim at a more sustainable economy for Sri Lanka. So I hope that answers the question.
So it's, thank you. It seems like it's quite a positive and upbeat attitude at the moment. In the road to recovery, which some have said is riddled with potholes, do you see anything as being a major potential threat to the country's progress?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question also. So maybe I also touched a little bit upon that also, but yeah, so it will be a politically very important year, I think, for Sri Lanka. So, so hopefully the choice that the people make will be, in the direction that will help the country strengthen its economy rather than weaken it. But I don't call that a risk. At the end of the day, the people will make their choice, and I think basically we will try to support that. But in any case, as I mentioned, I think the room for experimenting on the economic side is quite limited at this moment. So that's another fact. So we'll try to communicate that and see how things will go. So that might be the only risk I see. Yeah.
Thank you, Kotaro-san. Bingapal, moving over to you. Sri Lanka has received approximately 660 million under the current IMF program and the next tranche under review. 60 out of 73 commitments were met in the first round. Up to March 31st, 2024, only 17 commitments had been green, met. And transparency and good governance have been notable areas of challenge for the government. Can you just tell us what are your thoughts regarding the current trajectory, and can you foresee any issues that could cause us to skid off?
Thanks. The first thing is I would say, Jacinda, that we don't see a risk of crossing this review, because we've done, as a country, we've done a lot of work, be it fiscal policy, be it on the external sector. External sector has performed really well. Of course, there are areas to improve. Even on the debt restructuring, what they say is that you have to make meaningful progress on debt restructuring. It doesn't say that you have to complete for the second review. So I'm fairly confident that Sri Lanka will cross this review and will get the $300 billion. That's not the point. It's about how do we move forward. Can we go ahead with this primary surplus target? We already reached primary surplus this year. What is our revenue target for this year? It looks like we're going to miss the targets, though the government was very happy about reaching the first quarter targets. We are of the view that we will come to something close to 3.7 trillion maybe. We have set a target of 4.2 trillion. So there'll be so how far can we go with this increasing of taxes and the elevating poverty levels would be a question. That would be the larger question for anybody, any new political party or the same government by end of this year to tackle. But we don't see a risk of this review failing at this point. If you want me to touch very quickly on the debt restructuring, Kotara-san touched on the bilateral side. On the commercial side, we are at a final stage. As Standard Chartered Bank, we are fairly optimistic. There are 2 points that we are negotiating now. One is the test that they have proposed and we are proposing. They are proposing a single test. We are proposing a twin test. They are proposing an average GDP. We are proposing average GDP plus a growth rate, accumulation of the growth. Because if you only go on average GDP, what can happen is if the currency appreciates to like a 280, GDP will go up. Our base case is by 2020, even this year, GDP will be like 80 billion if the currency appreciates to like 290. So it's very dangerous for the country to agree on one test. So that's why the country has pushed back on the bondholders' proposal. And there are debates on the recovery values. There's also a debate on the haircut on the interest. But there's also a debate on macro-linked bond quantum. Bondholders have said 2.5 billion, 5.7 billion. We have said only include 2.7 billion. So all in all, bondholders are looking at a recovery value of something like 66, and we are looking at something like 56, 57. I think we have to come to a midpoint, and we are very close to reach that target, in my view.
So that sounds positive. Just since you mentioned on the exchange rate, what do you feel about the trend of the exchange rate right now? Is it?
It's a tricky one because we as Standard Chartered, actually last year we predicted 325. We landed 325. So that was a good prediction, good year. We believe there'll be a stronger rupee in the short run, but it all depends on how crude oil prices go up because of the crisis in the Middle East. And right now China is growing at something like 5.6%, 5.4%. If China goes to something like a 6%, there'll be a massive oil demand. And any crisis in the Middle East, oil can go to 90, 100. $1 of oil increase or crude increase is like $4 million of stress for the BOP for a month. That's like $48 million for a month. Can go up like $500 million as an annualized outflow. So oil going to a 90 probably we can handle. It's hovering around 80s, mid 80s anyway. But the oil goes to 100, there'll be another $500 million outflow. So those are rupee negative, events. And also if you open all the cars immediately, rupee will crash. In our view, rupee will depreciate by 10-15% if you quickly open up. We can talk about it later.
I think you're jumping ahead in the questions.
Yeah, so we are expecting a stronger rupee in the short run, and with imports opening up, rupee should depreciate by about 5-7%.
Do you see any reduced reliance on the petrodollar with other currencies also coming into play?
Yeah, so it's happening. The whole Russia-India deal. But it's very, very slow in our view. The BRIC initiative, there's a lot of work happening in some corridors, but for us, I think we have to rely on dollar. We have to work with our traditional exporters to Sri Lanka. We're just coming out of the crisis, so we have so many other challenges as well. We should not be adventurous.
Mrs. Jayasundar, if I can ask you, industry is one of the three sectors that contribute the most to the local GDP. It's also the one that has been perhaps hit hardest by the removal of long-standing fuel and energy subsidies, which were mandated by the IMF program, of course, and needed for economic stability. On top of this came higher VAT, higher income taxes to increase government revenue and stabilize and stop the bleeding. How have these fiscal measures impacted the competitiveness of Sri Lankan industry, and how has the industry adapted?
Actually, let me allow to talk on behalf of the Ministry of Industries, even though whether I'm not the Secretary Ministry of Industries, the Secretary Ministry of Industries and the officials are here for me to talk about the industry. So during my stay there and Industry Ministry, that we already started so many discussions with the Ministry of Finance to introduce the one tariff policy for all the industries. We know that VAT and several tax and so many sets and everything are there. Nearly around industrialists, even though whether those industries are working for that, so that they don't know what happened next day regarding the tax and VAT policies. So the Ministry of Industries, we introduced the one tariff policy and discussions are going on, and all the senior officials of the Industry Ministry, they are working for that. So 2025 onwards, definitely that tariff policy will be introduced for the industries. That should be one tariff policy for all the industries. So the Ministry of Finance, and with the support of TIP and Trade and Investment Policy Department and the Fiscal Policy Department, together with the Ministry of Industries, as well as the Sector Advisory Committee chairmen, with all the inputs of those officials, they are developing that tariff policy. Definitely the VAT and the tax structure should be changed. It should be industrial point of view, that it should be industry-friendly policy should be there. And they are developing that. And also let me talk regarding the automobile and component manufacturing industries. So Ministry of Industries, they introduced the SOP. All the industries, they know that after they introduce that SOP, the automobile and component manufacturing industries, they are really booming. That if you go through the data regarding the contribution to the GDP on this sector has increasing. This is an emerging industry. Actually, the industrialists, they are really focused on enhancing the component manufacturing industry, and we really want to develop the regional network as well as the global network, like Rohan Pallewatta has the network with Toyota Production, and he introduced sensors for that. They are using that. Likewise, the component manufacturing sector should be increased and enhanced. Actually, we are having the very good policy for developing that areas. And instead of that, automobile industries, after the Ministry of Industry introduced the policy, 29 companies, automobile companies are developing, and they introduced nearly around 14 vehicle models for the manufacturing sector. And also up to 2023 December, they actually they build up nearly around 30,000 vehicles, so e-vehicle, including e-vehicle also. Now the Ministry of Industries, they are focusing to enhance the electronic vehicles, electric vehicles, and the eco-friendly vehicle systems. And also that now I'm thinking and I'm considering the point of education point of view, that when the industries are developing, so if we consider to develop the industries, actually we want to focus more on enhancing the skilled manpower. So we identified that there is a problem. So Kotaru-san, I think that you also know that Tokyo and Japan, they are highly concerned on developing the skilled manpower based on the future requirement. And based on the future requirement, that the Ministry of Education, with the support of skills development and the vocational training, now we are in a process of developing the skilled manpower for the emerging industries. Automobile and component manufacturing is the #1 priority industries we are focusing. And up to now, we developed the Sector Advisory Council for the skills development in the automobile and component manufacturing. Now I'm waiting, and we already planned with the industries to identify their requirement. Otherwise, without identifying the industry requirement, it is useless to develop the courses and other curriculums and the skill development programs. So that's why that we are planned to, and we are ready to listen the industries. Now we are planned to do it, and next year, definitely at the end of this year, all the courses on automobile industries should be focused on the industrial point of view and their requirement. We are in the process of developing that kind of programs also.
Thank you, Ms. Jasudra. The ministry vision, from what I understand, is a globally competitive, sustainable and unique Sri Lankan manufacturing industry. Can I ask you, how is Sri Lanka positioning itself in the global manufacturing stage, and what are the unique propositions that make Sri Lanka attractive?
That actually, Yashendra, I want to emphasize, he talked about the GDP. I want to mention the contribution of the industry sector to the GDP in Sri Lanka. That is nearly around 28%. That the industry contribution is nearly around 28%. Out of that 28, the manufacturing sector contribution is 16.2. So we really want to focus to enhance the manufacturing sector contributions to the industrial sector. As you mentioned that the global scenario, normally I know that Japan, I love Japan, that's why I'm considering Japan, because I work there. So I very closely work with the automobile industry. The manufacturing contribution of Japan is nearly around 40% to the GDP out of their industrial sector. So we have to go more with this manufacturing sector contribution. That's why we are always considering that we want to focus more on enhancing the manufacturing sector economy in Sri Lanka on behalf of the service-oriented or other sectors. That is the way that I'm considering.
Absolutely. No, that's an excellent goal, that the ministry is focused on increasing manufacturers in Sri Lanka. What I would ask is that what would be the initiatives in terms of attracting these companies, because we've already seen some of them move outside of the country. How do we keep them here and attract the ones who have gone out to come back?
Yeah, actually, I don't know whether I have the authority to talk about that the industrial development policy is there. So we already developed the industrial development policy. That policy has focused and draft with the 5-year roadmap. Out of that 5-year roadmap, actually, all the policies are focused on enhancing the manufacturing industries. The government has taken initiatives with the several institutions, because still it is very important to work very closely with the industries. Otherwise, without having the public-private partnership, we cannot do it. So with the partnership of public, private and the people, that we are focusing to enhance, and there are so many programs to develop the manufacturing sectors. You know that there are the Ministry of Industries, they are identifying several manufacturing sectors, emerging sectors, and they are having programs and they are working very closely with the industries. Now all the industrial sectors, 20 sectors, they are preparing their roadmaps by focusing with the specific KPIs. They have already developed those things. I believe that with the support of the economic development and the Ministry of Finance and all the other government institutions, as well as the private sector, if we try to do it, definitely we can develop that manufacturing-oriented economy in Sri Lanka.
Great, thank you. Moving to Mr. Rupasinghe, although Sri Lanka's IMF program doesn't specifically cover mobility or transportation, the IMF's general stance is that improving transportation connectivity is crucial for reducing trade costs, boosting economic growth, and promoting regional integration in developing countries. We understand that the government has spoken on themes of transition to e-mobility, modernization of public transport, most notably buses, and also multimodal transport hubs in the past. Would you be able to enlighten us? What are the main current and upcoming initiatives in the pipeline to innovate and improve mobility and transportation?
Thank you, Yasendra, and thank you so much, CMTA, for inviting me and giving opportunity to talk about this industry. I hope you understand. I read out my background, so I'm not a transport specialist or not in the coming new to the industry, but whatever the experience that I had during my short tenure in this industry, I would rather have to elaborate not only the initiatives but the approach that we should take. So you talked about e-mobility and the future of the transportation in the global context, but I would like to make this a point to understand the real current situation in the country, in Sri Lanka. So are we really operating the full highest efficient mode of transportation in the country at the moment? So transportation as an industry, what we should actually believe that we have a highly inefficient transport industry in the country. So we, rather than we just focus on the trends and the new upcoming approaches in the elsewhere in the world, what we as a country should first focus on the fundamentals right. So I think the ministry is at the moment trying to do that and focus on that first. And that doesn't say like we are not actually focusing the future and just trying to be on par with the rest. Say, if I take the numbers, you know, like we are just taking 6% of our passengers on rail, which may be the lowest in the world. And our logistic is just less than 1%. And our total public passenger utilization of public transport is less than 50% at the moment, which was 70% 20 years ago. So do you think that we are actually moving towards right direction as a country? So true that we need to talk about e-mobility, we need to go and think about industry with the electronic. I mean, there's no point introducing or go to E if you don't have the carbon neutral or proper energy, green energy on the net. So I think first we as a country focus on like have a green energy net before we move to the e-mobility. So there are so many things that we should focus on before we fire our guns actually. So what we do at the moment, we are focusing on the national land transport policy, which is actually in the process. We just forwarded it to the cabinet and it's in the National Planning Department for their final review. We believe like we will be able to bring it back, bring it to in act and bring it to active status within a short period of time, so that the government and the people like you in the industry can make decisions based on the national policies rather than the different other parameters. So that is something that we believe is the most important. And together with that, actually we are thinking, we have already done the e-mobility policy as well, which we believe is very, very much important, which is also done with the help of experts in the industry. So we have people here as well, those who contributed to us. So we are actually in the process of taking it to the next level as well. And those are policy level involvements. And also what we believe, most of our systems, including transport, are self-grown without much external interventions. As you know, I mean, these self-grown systems are no more viable and efficient. So we should have right intervention to the systems or the processors in the current context.
This is in terms of infrastructure?
Both, everything. So I think that is some other area that ministry is currently focusing on. Also, as you rightly said, this is like, say for example, it's important to, with the numbers that I already shared, you understand the importance of shifting the mode of transportation. We are actually, I mean, as a personal mobility, we prefer the car more than anything else. So we have to change people's mindset, and we have to actually trying to shift people from the inefficient mode of transportation in our context, from car to the train or a bus. So to do that, we have to have a better or a comfortable public mobility. For that, we really need investment. Are we ready to do that investment to shift from a private car to a comfortable bus? So these are the things that we really need to do. So this is where we need the support from the private sector or the investors. So are we really capable of tapping that investment with the current economic context? So that is where your topic comes into picture. All these things ultimately relate to each other. So if we can, as Bingu rightly said, if we are comfortable with our economic parameters and the numbers, the mobility will become a more conversant and comfortable for everybody. And we will be able to build a more efficient transport sector which will give a lot of comfort to economy. I know, as IMF very rightly mentioned, this is one huge burden to economy. This is interrelated. We should take the economy right to bring the right investment back, and with that investment we will be able to support back to the economy. So this is where we are today.
Thank you, Mr. Rupasinghe. Just to clarify, as the driver, the primary driver, I would think, as of a growing economy, is the development of rail transportation the primary focus right now, or what would be the main focus of transport?
Actually, as you know, right, our rail we started in 1855, 17 years prior to Japan did the rail. So our systems are quite old. You know the amount of investment Japan brought into the system, whereas Sri Lanka, what we did. So we haven't done the right investment. So our rail, not only the network, but locomotives and also carriages, those are not up to the standard. So you can't ask people to go and ride a train, but you have to make sure that train is ready to bring the people in. So we need the investment. We have to actually rethink of everything. We can't make the railway a mode of transport being a department. This is the reality. So we are not only actually thinking of modernizing a railway, but we are actually trying to think how we should operate the railway. So these are the things that we are actually thinking of. Of course, like these are long-term approaches, but we have a very short-term approaches as well. So we are thinking of bringing railway as one preferred mode of transport. Especially, we are trying to support tourism through railways. We introduced a couple of trains recently. We have introduced a train called Calypso in Bandaravilla, which is completely targeting tourists. So we have done the railway ticket reservation system 100% online. I think if you permit me, I can touch that part as well. Say, without digitizing, I don't think that public transport become something user-friendly for anybody at the moment. I mean, you say, let me be very open. Can you just go and check the bus timetable on your mobile? Just timetable. We don't have. Can you book a ticket? No, we don't have. So we are actually in a very primitive level at the moment. So we are trying to invest. So digitizing and decarbonizing would be very nice words, which cost a lot of money, energy and efforts. So we are trying to invest.
You mentioned digitization. Are there any programs that are currently in place? Because that seems like low-hanging fruit since the technology is already available.
Yeah, actually there are a lot of initiatives. We have done the railway reservation, but parallelly we are actually with the ADB grant, we are introducing railway ticketing solutions, and we have already floated the tender for electronic tolling for our expressways, which I believe is a must. And we are actually trying to introduce spot-fine and demerit system for DMT and electronic license or e-version of a license, which will be convenient for everybody. And we are plotting a tender within a couple of weeks' time for e-ticketing solution for bus services. And we don't have bus tracking solution, which we are actually introducing with the support of Google very recently. So those are very, I think, low-hanging fruits which we will be able to. I think one reason these are for somebody would be, for you it may be something that feel like, okay, why not that we just bring a solution and implement, but working with the government setup is a challenge again. It's not that easy. Bingo can go and just give me this and I will set it up and I'll bring it to operation within 2 weeks. But to do the same thing, I will take at least 2 years.
These low-hanging fruits have the capability together to create quite a large impact.
Of course. I think this is again a cycle, right? Where the point that we can start is the important part.
Kotaro-san, if I can come back to you. And this is a question on a point that you actually mentioned, and we were discussing about the transition also to e-mobility, which may not be the foundational requirement, but there's a kind of emphasis towards this in policy at the moment. You mentioned that Japan was looking at, by 2035, looking at 100% electrified vehicles, PHEV or EV. Firstly, what is the consumer perception towards this?
Yes, I mean, in general, people are very much, wary of the trend, general trend, because I think, especially when the government announced our carbon neutrality goal back in 2020, there was a lot of, debates going on internally, so they're very much aware. But then at the same time, so I was mentioning about in the context of Sri Lanka, the actual infrastructure that is surrounding. So yeah, I mean, many people would be interested in, buying the most advanced type of electric vehicle, of course, but then it might be very costly, and then there might be difficulties in actually having a means to put the electricity in the battery. So yeah, so it's still both ways, and I think these things will take time. Also, well, working in the diplomatic arena nowadays, I think people are also very much wary of more kind of strategic risks. And that will lead directly to energy security. So I think this also will play into people's psychology. So as a general trend, I think people are looking into moving forward. But then in reality, there are many things that will prevent frog leaping happening. So I think it has to be gradual, and and even in a fairly advanced country like Japan, the whole thing will take a lot of time. So I was listening to Ranjit-san's comments about, so for us also, there are many places we have to start fixing before we make that giant leap. And for Sri Lanka, maybe there's even more of that to cope with. So.
And one other main area of concern is the power generation itself, of course. And Japan has been quite substantially reliant on nuclear power, whereas Sri Lanka has no nuclear power to speak of. So in terms of generating clean power to suddenly cater to this substantially increased demand, especially during the peak hours, which is when ostensibly most people will be charging their vehicles, would need to be thought out. And like you said, it would take a considerable amount of time to implement. How is Japan handling this transition? Is it more nuclear power, or is it going into another direction?
Well, talking about the energy mix, this in itself is a challenge, because back in 2011 we had a huge earthquake, and Fukushima first power reactor had some serious damage happening, and we coped with that. But so as a base load power source, nuclear energy is very, it's very clean, and it's it's very reliable. But I think politically, so now we are making adjustments to increase the percentage. In the past, we were up to like more than 20%. I think now nuclear power generation only accounts for like 5-point-something%. Very marginal. And then other renewables, around, I forgot the exact figure, but around 20 or something. So, then the rest, we are very much at this moment have to rely upon fossil fuels. So that's also a reality. So we are kind of struggling, but then in the context of our green energy strategy, so that our mixture, we are working on that front also. So in any case, to increase renewables is one way to do it, but it won't increase exponentially and suddenly. So in itself, it's everything is a struggle. So yeah. So we also having then in the context of Sri Lanka, I mean, it must be even more of a challenge, and yeah. So
if I can ask if any of the other panelists, Mr. Jayasundar or Mr. of you have any comments on the topic of energy transition? Binguma, if I can ask you next, for an economy to grow, one of the critical factors, now we're looking at legislative framework. So for finance and banking, the Banking Act was just passed by Parliament recently. Sri Lanka, however, has not been very progressive when it comes to bankruptcy, insolvency. And with what we note from other countries that are quite progressive and supportive in this area, notably the US and India has also reformed its regulatory framework, is that this has yielded a great deal more innovation and growth, especially in startups, but also into established companies. What are your views? What changes do you feel are necessary that can spur the same kind of economic growth in Sri Lanka?
I think in terms of time, it's very timely. We have about 13% in the bad books at the moment in the banks. It went up to 13.8, came down to 12.8, now it's about 12.9. It's static at the moment, it's not coming down. We also lost our parate rights, so recovery has kind of slowed down. And that's also kind of like over a 30-year-old process. What India has done, or Chapter 11 in the US, there is a workout framework. So when a company goes into stress, be it SME, be it an individual, be it a company, if you're in stress, you can say, I want to get into a workout framework, and you can trigger that process. So then the larger creditors will come, just same as what the country is going through now. You do call all the larger creditors, 70% of the creditors will come. Then there are processes where you appoint somebody into that client's board, if it's a large company, and you agree on a 180 days period to, revive the company. So there are agreed haircuts, principal, interest, then you extend the loan, there are NPV losses and all of that for the banks, but there's a very cohesive, comprehensive workout framework that India has now implemented. Now Sri Lanka has now looked at it because the situation we are in, World Bank is doing some work with us, SLB is actually spearheading the whole process. We will come up with an intercreditor agreement where the banks will all agree to work on some of these toxic assets, about 1 billion rupees. And before going into Parate, we might look at working together and reviving some of these companies. Because even if you do Parate and acquire some of these assets, what do you do with some of these assets? These are hotels, factories. So banks have a lot of lands at the moment. So that is in the cards. It's at a very early stage. We're also very conscious about whether we have the infrastructure or not. Now India got IBCs, insolvency and bankruptcy courts. We don't have that. So we have 4, I think, commercial high courts, and they're full. So if you go into commercial high courts for a debt recovery and you wait for 2 years, after the workout period is over, you might derail the whole thing, the NPLs will go to 20%. Even the good borrowers won't be able to, borrow. So we are very conscious about the suspension of Parate to begin with, but we are optimistic about the insolvency laws and the bankruptcy laws and the workout framework that we're working on. Hopefully before end of this year, that's also, by the way, IMF condition, hopefully it will be available for use, good use by end of this year. India has seen a huge success on this one. So it's coming. But in terms of entrepreneurs and startups and all, there's a lot of work to be done. We don't have startup banks. We don't have funding lines. We don't have concessions. It's just the same tax structure. It's a very difficult domain for a startup in this country at the moment. So those are things that we have to negotiate with IMF. So we cannot say a startup, when you make the money in the first year, you should pay 30% taxes. It doesn't work. It doesn't work like that anywhere in the world. So it's very important. We spoke about industries and 16%. Japan is 40%. So minimum you should reach 25% manufacturing. To reach manufacturing 25%, do we have enough zones to begin with? Our zones are full. Have we built any new zones in the last 10 years? No, nothing. So a lot of work to be done. Insolvency laws is one thing. We don't have an environment for a business to start and perform today. So those are serious policy issues, ease of doing business, etc. The licensing that you have to do, you need like 15, 20 approvals for anything. So those are things you have to sort out first.
Mrs. Jayasundar, turning to you, on the comments that you just mentioned, in terms of a new company coming into an industrial area, let's say a micro or small company, what is the environment that's faced, and how can we improve the environment to ensure a greater chance of success?
Yeah, as he clearly mentioned that in Sri Lanka, we allocate out of our total land, that we allocate only 0.04% for the industries. Definitely, if we want to develop the industrial side, at least we allocate 1% land for the industries. SMEs are really facing difficulties in getting the lands. To get the lands, that we have to follow the lengthy procedures. Now the President has appointed the IFCC Investor Facilitation Committee. I'm also a member of that committee. So we work for enhancing those areas to support the SME sector and the business startup. Actually, the main issue to get the licensing, they have to go to the nearly around, they want to follow the 84 organizations to get the license for the industries, and also to get the land to the industries, they have to follow 208 weeks for getting the approval for the land in Sri Lanka. And also to get the financial facilities from the financing agencies. I don't want to mention that how much document you have to submit the financial institutions from to get the loan facilities. Those kind of barriers are there to start the business and the SME sector. Actually, that all the things government has focuses, and the government, the IFCC has focuses more on enhancing these SOPs actually. Standard of procedures we are preparing, and we are developing those procedures and simplifying the procedures, having discussions with several government institutions to get the environmental license. It will take nearly around 184 weeks to get the environmental license for the industries to start their clearance and everything. So likewise, that there are lengthy procedures you have to follow. The SMEs, they are very difficult in following this process. That's why the government has focused, especially the HE, has focused more on enhancing this process and simplify the procedures. We have to address those things. That's why I mentioned that, as he clearly mentioned, and also the Kotaro-san also mentioned that we should have amalgamate and the complex process, national policies for those things. Actually, the BOI also, can you imagine that? I don't know what the BOI also doing, because when they want to get the BOI land, it will take around 32 weeks. So BOI. As he mentioned that we did not start the zone, but there are so many zones we identified, and we are in the process of allocating those lands with the Sabon-Joran plan, that we are identifying the separate lands and the industrial zone for the industries. Now actually the government has focused more on enhancing the land allocated for the industries, at least 1% of the total land of Sri Lanka. The developed countries, the norm, global norm, that the countries, they are assigning at least 3% land for the industries. That we never think about that. Now we are in the process of thinking those things.
Mr. Rupasinghe, Sri Lanka has an extremely geographically spread out population. You mentioned the challenges of public transport. Out of the 22 million population, 81% is actually rural, which of course it makes it almost impossible to cover with public transportation, especially for last mile connectivity. Is there any kind of view to address this issue of last mile connectivity when we have such a dispersed population, and not just in terms of passenger but also goods transport?
This is one major area that we are actually focusing on with there are multiple agencies actually highlighting the importance of this, especially as you rightly said, passenger is one segment, the other one is good, especially we being an agriculture, agri-based nation and an agri-based economy, the moving agri products is something very crucial. So we are actually focusing on various two various angles how we really can address this. This will be part of actually the policy as well. And what we thought, like say, even we had a discussion in the morning, what we understand without having a complete solution for the logistic mobility or a good mobility end to end, just finding a solution for a last mile won't work. So, so we are actually thinking of how we can introduce or set up a very good core logistic network through railway, so that we can actually think of a last mile solution where we have a intermediate connectivity. So you know, like Sri Lankan Railway designed for logistics, not for passenger, and we had more than 85% of the share of the logistics at one point, and we now have less than 1%. We don't have a logistic rail network, we only have a passenger network at the moment. So we are actually, we are, I must say, like we are in the planning stage. We are actually in a level where we are thinking of policy level intervention. So I know like there are projects or initiatives from World Bank to introduce e-vehicles for the last mile good mobility, which they consider is something important. So we are actually bringing all these into this entire network that we are talking about. So we really need a very good, transparent, good mobility network, which we believe the cheapest is railway at the moment, and we have tracks running across the country to each, other than 2 districts, we have rail connectivity for all the other districts. So if we properly utilize and plan a network, we will be able to achieve this. And also, we should not forget about last mile passenger network as well. So up until now, we haven't considered the taxi as a passenger service. We are talking about only the buses and the railways. There are so many other mode of transports available in the industry now, which we actually need to have a proper regulation while giving facilities for them to develop. So we actually think we are in touch with the taxi operators to see how we can actually, while regulating, how we can support them to improve the services. So there are many initiatives from the ministry side to serve the last mile. And we know, like we only tried the last mile services with the same mode of transport that we use for the inter-provincial connectivity, which is inefficient as a mode for that purpose. So we are thinking of mode shifting for different segments of the network now. So this would be our approach for it.
Just to question a point that you made, if I heard you correctly, did we go from 85% logistics by train to 1%?
Yeah. Yes.
So, how did that happen? Would you know the kind of journey that?
No, I think maybe like there are one side, like the amount of goods that we transport has increased, so that the rail network won't improve the level that we have improved our economy and the requirement. So that is the reason. I mean, like it's not somebody's problem. It's the problem of the system. We haven't actually. That's where the problem is. Are we really investing our money for the right purpose? Are we actually thinking of return on our investment? So we are actually investing for expanding, widening our roads, whereas the best would be to invest for mode shifting. So this is where the problem. Are we really thinking of return of our rupee that we put into? So I think we as a ministry has the responsibility of thinking that part as well, if we are really connecting mobility as a valuable stakeholder of economy.
Mrs. Jayasundara, the Ministry of Industries has been critical in supporting industry development since 1931. Actually, it was one of the first ministries in Sri Lanka. Can you tell us what are some of the current key initiatives for driving industrial growth?
Is it okay for me to elaborate the things that the industry? So the industry ministry, actually they are having so many programs to support the industries, because that currently during the COVID period, let me elaborate the support that the Ministry of Industries did for the industries. During the COVID pandemic, actually that there are so many issues, you know, that the industries were faced. So during that period, the Ministry of Industries supported a lot to overcome the issues of the COVID pandemic. And also, currently, the Ministry of Industries are in a process of developing so many national policies to support the industries. And also the Ministry of Industries, they are supporting the SME sector by providing the low interest loan facilities. The ministry, they have the SMILE and the e-print loan scheme, and they are supporting the industries. Not only that, for enhancing the green technologies, it is very important for industries to introduce in the green technologies. And if you are talking about the mobility and economic growth, actually the eco-friendly technologies are very important. The ministry is supporting to the industries to those things. And also, not only that, actually with the 20 sectors, so 20 emerging sectors, the 20 sector advisory committee chairmen are closely work with the ministry, and they are always bringing their issues to the Ministry of Industries. Now the ministry has in a discussion with the finance ministry and other organizations to support the industries. There are so many programs. Actually, allow me to talk about the things that what the education ministry is doing for the industries, because as I clearly mentioned that Kazuki-san, actually I know that Japan is identifying the real requirement of upcoming 50 years, right? That Sri Lanka, the last year, the UN has declared the report regarding the knowledge management awareness of the countries, that Sri Lanka is lagging behind 50 years. Japan is far behind 50 years, then Sri Lanka is lagging behind 100 years, I feel. Therefore, actually, we want to address that issue. That's why the president is always talking about the future-ready manpower. So to address that issue, Ministry of Education has so many programs to develop the future-ready manpower, and we are in the process of developing the AI clubs with the school, smart classrooms, smart education, STEM education, STEAM education, and the technology development for the skills development, and likewise that there are so many programs. Actually, as you mentioned that government, we are not given the publicity for those things. Without having silent, there are so many programs around. I really want to appreciate the CMITA initiatives organized in panel. Thank you very much. This is the good opportunity for us to share the views and ideas and get the ideas from the audience, because the public-private partnership is very important. That's why that he mentioned that actually that there are so many barriers in the public sector. Yes, there are so many barriers. That's why that when we consider the ease of doing business index, the Sri Lanka is in 99th position. So if you analyze the problematic factors, the inefficient government bureaucracy is the number one reason. The number two reason is the poor work ethic culture of the nation. And also the unskilled manpower is another reason. Likewise, if you analyze the reasons, that we want to address those reasons. Problematic areas. Now the Ministry of Education as well as the Ministry of Industries, we have identified the problematic areas and address those areas to overcome the challenges. Likewise, that there are so many programs. So I feel that industries very closely, they are working with the Ministry of Industries, and also now they are very closely will work with the Education Ministry to identify the future forecasted real required skilled manpower. That is our focus.
Thank you. That was very informative. I wanted to ask you about an interesting point you brought up about the impending impact of AI. Now, many of us are kind of at the forefront of knowledge, but some of us are not aware of the impact that AI could potentially have, especially on developing countries, where more developed countries can invest on robotic infrastructure and into AI applications and AI productivity to outpace the competitive advantage that cheaper labor can be provided by developing countries. Do you feel that we're taking adequate steps in order to, and I know, Kotaro-san, you also mentioned about a social security net, for the impending inevitable displacement that will happen, do you feel that we're taking adequate steps to safeguard the employee base?
Yeah, definitely. You know that now we are in a process of developing the education response platform. Under that education response, AI and the technology, we have given the high priority. That so actually, I have a problem. Do you have the clear idea regarding what do you mean by AI? I'm asking you. Do you have that?
So AI, in terms of any kind of machine learning algorithm, but is also extending into robotics now.
Yeah.
So it's also going to cover fields like accounting, finance, medicine. It's not just the ChatGPT that everyone hears in the news, but it's extending into it's on the phone,
Yes.
it's on the TV.
Yeah. So Yashindra, actually, world is talking about the fifth industrial revolution. Where are we now? The Sri Lanka is still, are we in a process of adhering the third industrial revolution is also? That at the beginning, fourth industrial revolution, through the fourth industrial revolution, Kotaro-san, all the people are talking about the AI and everything. But after that, we identified without having the manpower involvement, so that we cannot implement any AI facilities with the machines. So that's why they are talking about the fifth industrial revolution. Fifth industrial revolution means robotics and AI and everything, plus manpower, skilled manpower. So actually in Sri Lanka, actually, many people are talking about the AI. I have a doubt. Where are we in the IT sophisticated index? The Sri Lanka is in far behind that. Actually, Mongolia also in better than us. So that's why I'm thinking that we really want to focus more on creating awareness regarding the AI and everything. AI application should be introduced to the school. That's why the president has identified 100 schools to develop the AI club. If you ask my kid, he know better than me that what is the industry, what is the applications comes under AI. The younger generation, Ishat generation, they have the good idea. Ishat generation, they know what is AI. But in a process of here, that who will represent the Ishat generation here? We all are representing the X and Y generation. You all are representing the Y generation. We are representing Ishat generation, not the X generation. Ishat generation, they know more than X and Y generation regarding the AI. That's why that we want to create awareness among and get the involvement of the younger generations to enhance these things. I'm sure that these industrialists with their young children, they have applied so many AI applications to enhance their industries, and they are applying those technologies to enhance their industries. I know that many industrialists are here, they are with their children, they are doing those things. So that's why the government has focused more on enhancing the AI knowledge to the schools.
Bingamal, if I can just ask you, what do you foresee is the impact to banking and finance? It's already in countries overseas.
Yes, so thanks to the regulators, we are protecting our business. If not, fintechs would have taken the whole thing. A lot of the countries have gone into platform banking. AI is very big in terms of hyper-personalization, but we have a lot of issues around data sharing and data accessing data because GDPR guidelines. But with the data that we have, like for an example, I can track every possible spend my clients are doing and the potential spends. I can follow the algorithm, I can understand exactly what the client is thinking through the social media feeds and how they spend, and we have various data points. These are very common tools now, and banks are also going into virtual banking, etc. I was listening to you. It's encouraging to hear that schools are looking at AI, Industry 4.0, all of that is very nice, but Sri Lanka has to implement a digital ID before we do anything, because we are a very manual country. Right, we had national identity cards from the late 50s, early 60s. One of the first countries to implement national identity cards. We had data in the passport office, we had data in the license department, RMV. We are struggling to implement digital ID for the last 15 years. So before AI is a nice thing, it's good, teach the kids. But for us to move forward, and especially to broaden the taxes. Without digital ID, Sri Lanka will really suffer. So my ask would be for any policymaker, prioritize that. That's number one. Digitize the economy, all these corruption issues, everything will go away. You spoke about digitizing the transport sector. It's a critical thing, it's a very common things in any country. Bus timing and all is available in any country you go to. And these are not expensive, complex applications. So we had to take those baby steps and do few big enablers, not a lot. One or two, the life will change. AI will take off anyway, Gen Zs. I mean, we don't have to do anything about it. They will take it.
And also I want to add something regarding the EID card. That in a process of developing the EID card, you know that 15 years has taken, still that the vendors, they are having the problem with the government. The selected vendors, they have go to the court, and there are so many court cases regarding that, I say. And also I am a member of the e-passport committee, and there are also that the selected vendors, that instead of the selected vendors, that the failed vendors, they have to go to the court. That's why the procedures are dragging. So that is the problem we are facing. As you clearly mentioned, we don't have the national database here. Yes, we don't have the national industry database, we don't have the national education database, we don't have nothing in Sri Lanka for digitalization. And also, to go for the digitalization, are we given the data pre? That the school children, not only that, my child also, he is already ready to work after 12 midnight. Because after 12 midnight, data is free. Then all the school children and the young people, they are working after 12 years, 12 midnight. That is the problem. The digital infrastructure should be developed here to go for the e-mobility and the economy, digital economy. That is my intention. Last week also, we had a discussion with the Mobitel companies and those SLT and everything. So there are so many things.
Again, recurring theme, focusing on the fundamentals. And one point I can draw here is that perhaps AI courts might speeden up the process of this litigation. One last round, if you can ask Kotara-san. Ambassador Hideaki mentioned a lack of confidence during the last discussion that we had at a previous event. The sentiment seemed that Japan was monitoring the situation from a distance, and you did allude to being able to restart projects sometime down the line once more confidence is established. What is the current sentiment that Japan has?
Well, I don't think I was present when my ambassador was delivering his speech, so I'm not sure if the characterization is correct in the first place. But because I think we have always been more hands-on rather than sitting back, and then yes. So I guess the question is more about what we are going to do towards the future. Yes. So. As I have been explaining, especially once the debt restructuring will move forward, I think we will look into more, resuming our yen loan projects, but also to facilitate trade and investment, between Japan and Sri Lanka. But then I think the things that we have been discussing, like no digital platform, or and so all these things will be obstacles. So that was why I was also
or opportunities.
Yeah, and so business environment to enhance that. I mean, it's so. I guess my takeaway today is that there are many things that has to be fixed. I think on the ground, maybe for the people of Sri Lanka, but also for outside entities to come in. I think there are many things that should be fixed sooner rather than later. Or otherwise, there's a lot of attention in Sri Lanka picking up in the economy. So now it's a very good chance to promote what you have, tourism also, and then the trade and investment. But if the mindset isn't changed, and if once some entity comes in to do some investment, and all the procedures that Tiraka was mentioning, I mean, I'm fortunate I'm not a Japanese business person trying to invest here. I mean, so yeah, so but all these things, there's so many things to do. But at the end of the day, we can't just be complaining. So we have to prioritize and put the resources, limited resources, into the areas, and I think donor countries are here to help you in once you prioritize and we have the resources, then we'll try to combine that together. But I think totally agree. Digital platform is absolutely necessary, and I was talking a lot about this maybe last year, with the hope that before the election some things will go through. And I was actually sitting in many of the meetings, in many government offices. But it seems that none of them are actually, bearing fruit. I mean, it takes a lot of time. So there might be some things that could be done to expedite this whole process. And so during this whole political season, hopefully, these kind of things should be, there should be more light shed on these things, and something should be done. Then, then that will give us much more hope because we have all the good intentions that I've been mentioning. Lastly, I think because Tiraka-san also mentioned about, the human capital investment side, and just in this room we have Yotsukura-san, Toyota Lanka, and then and also Yamada-san. So JICA and Toyota Lanka have been working with NITA and like automobile training and whatever. So under your new purview also there's many things that we are doing on the ground. So hopefully we can do the things that are necessary and work on them one-on-one and let them bear fruit.
Thank you, Koda-san. Bingu, if I can ask you, the hot topic of the day, of course, everyone's been waiting for the question. The government has recently teased that they would look at reopening vehicle imports towards the end of this year or early next year. In your view, at what stage and what would be the requirements that the country will be ready and to facilitate sustainable imports?
No, see, rupee has seen a very unusual appreciation. Not very healthy for exporters. So one solution can be opening up imports. But the real challenge is we don't know what the potential outflow would be. So the safest way, I would say, let's wait for debt restructuring, and that's not far from now, maybe a couple of months from now. Then you get rating upgrade, flows will come in, some FDI flows will come into the country. We are accumulating something like $150 to $200 million every month to the reserves now because of the cash flow positive. We have cash flow positive now. So 5 months from now will be like additional $1 billion, IMF money will come. So we will get to a very comfortable $6 billion before end of this year in our view. So right timing would be the last quarter in my view. You don't have to wait till next year. We can start slowly. I think some work has already happened. We can start whether you want to do a hybrid or electric vehicles. I wouldn't comment on that. But we can start slowly and take it forward because we have to open up. We can't keep on going like this. One important thing I would like to say is for the automotive industry, please make sure that you work with the tax authorities and the government, and when you do these sales, make sure that people have a tax file. We are seriously pushing the government to make sure that you do a lot of in terms of reforms, in terms of registration. That's the starting point. You register the vehicle under you. This country you can run vehicles on open papers for years without any problem. I've not seen many countries like that. And this country you can carry 20 million of cash, hard cash, and buy a car. I've not seen many countries like that. So this country, again, you have these permits, right? Permits for everybody. And you can sell the permit, right? Permit is for you, right? And this is tax money going into permits. This is incentives going to the government offices because you're not paying well, you're giving a permit of 5 million, 10 million rupees. Bad practices again. It has an impact on the fiscal policy. I know you all promote these things and permits come, vehicles will come, you'll go to another person, black money, all those things. So I'm very concerned about the underlying operation of the industry. So something that you all have to think about if you want sustainable development of the industry.
Thank you very much. And I'm told that we're running actually out of time. And I would like to thank all of our panelists for their enlightening discussion today.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to propose the vote of thanks today. Thank you to all of you for braving the weather and the traffic to be here today, this evening. It was our pleasure to present this talk on mobility and economic growth. And we would especially like to first thank Mr. Kotaro Katsuki, the Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Japan. You have been our supporter from the time you arrived in Sri Lanka. We greatly appreciate your time and effort in being here.